on the issue of Ukraine, where Republican candidates led by former President Trump are turning away from the party's traditional national security roots and questioning the U.S.'s commitment to the war. I asked Mr. Trump about what he believes are the stakes in Ukraine for the United States. Do you think that our security, the United States security, is linked to Ukraine's security?
I think that Europe has to do more. We're in for $200 billion. They're in for $25 billion. And it affects them more than it affects us. It certainly affects them much more than it affects us.
So you do think that it's linked?
Well, I think Europe is taking advantage of a stupid president.
You've probably...
Look, Biden should say to them, you have to equalize. You have to catch up. You know, Europe is about the same size as our economy if you add them all up, add the countries up. It's about the same size. And Biden should say to them, like I did with NATO. You know, NATO, they all owed money. I said, get your money in. And we had over $430 billion put in almost immediately. And the head of NATO, Stoltenberg, Secretary General, nice guy, he said to me, most amazing thing I've ever done. And he said it publicly, too.
Let me ask you about your strategy, though, because you have said you want to end this war in 24 hours. You saw the meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Putin. Do you think that complicates your strategy if you were reelected to try to end this war?
It would have been easier if the war didn't start and you'd have hundreds of thousands of people living, most importantly. But it would have been a lot easier if it didn't. But I can get it done, and I can get it done quickly.
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours, and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawfully
I'd make a fair deal for everybody. Nope.
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
You know, that's something that could have been negotiated because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal where nobody was killed. They had a deal. They would have had a Ukraine country. Now nobody even knows if Ukraine is going to be totally taken over. I will say this. Something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine.
I want to ask you about something President Putin said about you this week. I don't know if you've seen it. This was very recent. President Putin said, quote, "We surely hear that Mr. Trump says he will resolve all burning issues within several days, including the Ukrainian crisis. We cannot help but feel happy about it." What do you make of that? Do you welcome his support?
I like that he said that because that means what I'm saying is right. I would get him into a room, I'd get Zelensky into a room, then I'd bring them together and I'd have a deal worked out. I would get a deal worked out. It would have been a lot easier before it started. Essentially for 4 years, I kept them from doing anything. Because you know what, I will tell you this, I never said this, Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I said, don't ever do it, don't ever do it. He would have never done it. But again, oil prices. He wouldn't have done it because of me, but oil prices. The prices were so high that he had so much money, so he had all this money to prosecute the war. The one who drove up the prices was Biden.
Given that President Putin has bombed maternity wards, 20,000 kids kidnapped from Ukraine by Russia, mass graves. Do you welcome his support, his all but endorsement?
Look, I had a very good relationship with him, and yet nobody was tougher on Russia than me. I stopped Nord Stream 2. You never heard of Nord Stream 2. That was the pipeline until I got involved. I said Nord Stream 2, people that were sophisticated, military people and political people never heard of Nord Stream 2. I had it ended. The pipeline was dead. Biden came in and he approved it. There was nobody tougher than me with Russia, and yet I got along with Putin. Let me tell you, I got along with him really well. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He's got 1,700 nuclear missiles, and so do we. But look, that's a good thing. Getting along is okay, but I got along through strength. And the war would have never happened. The war would have never happened. Now what's happened, it's so bad. The oil price is so high. It's hard to get it stopped. The oil price is so high. When he goes above $50 and $60 a barrel, he makes a lot of money on the war. Now, it's a humanitarian thing. It's a lot of different reasons. But I will get that war stopped very, very quickly.
I want to talk about another region that you talked about. Let's talk about another region you talked about, China. If you were to cut a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky, do you run the risk of emboldening China to invade Taiwan?
No, not at all. Because China, He's another one I got along to until we had the China virus come in. Once COVID came in, okay, once it was like, I made a great trade deal with China, one of the greatest deals ever made for the farmers and for the manufacturers. $50 billion a year is a great deal. I don't even talk about it because once COVID came in, it was like, I didn't want to talk about anything. I was a much different person. What happened to this world, not our country, the whole world, what happened with COVID. And it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. What happened, what China did to the world was so bad. But I had a great relationship
Would you send
I had a
troops
great
to Taiwan?
relationship with President Xi. Really great relationship. And he was going to stop fentanyl from coming in. He was going to do a lot of, he was going to criminalize it if you made it. In China, they have a death penalty for drug deals. He was going to make that with fentanyl dealers too. But then the election didn't work out, and he never had to do that.
I know you've been asked this, but very quickly, if China were to invade Taiwan, have you made a determination, again, since voters are about to go to the polls, would you send the U.S. military into Taiwan if President Xi were to invade? President Biden says he would.
I won't say, because if I said, I'm giving away, only stupid people are going to give that answer. I heard the other day DeSanctimonious said something about he was going to do this or he was going to do that. I say, well, why is he saying the strategy? You can't say that. So when you ask me that question, I would never say that because you give away all your options.
But you don't take it off the table.
I don't take anything off the table.